So I think if we refresh the screens, it'll be able to, might have to like go and then come back to refresh it. So, because it should pop up here in a second. All right. There we go.
There we are.
Awesome. Okay, so we are all taking a moment here.
Oh, look at that.
To turn around and share the broadcast out with everybody. So if you actually are in right away, if you could give us just a quick second while we turn around and share the broadcast out, we'd really appreciate it. And for those of you who actually might be popping in, thank you so much for popping in with us today. This is our first episode of the Define Her Story talk show. Okay. Let's see here. Watch us live. Okay, and then I've got, let's see here. Let's see if yay, it is cooperating with me. Sometimes it cooperates with me, like when I start typing in somebody's name, and it, pulls it up, and other times it doesn't.
This is not, by the way, how we're going to carry this conversation throughout the
No.
whole show.
I know, right?
Through our phones. All like on the phone.
And I hate that. But it's so, I know, isn't it kind of crazy? It's like, oh my
I
gosh,
wish we could schedule the post, but we can't. So
I
bear
know,
with
that
us.
would be cool, wouldn't it? That would be cool.
We've got 5 viewers right now.
Awesome. I think that might be all of us, but that's okay.
Oh, that's right.
It's awesome.
That's all right. Awesome. So
it's going up.
Okay, so while we're finishing up with sharing and everything like that, I'd like to introduce everyone who is on the panel with us today. So we have Alicia Elatassi. This is her fabulous Thinking Girls Boutique that we are actually broadcasting from. So thank you very much for letting us do this here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me
beautiful.
host.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful location.
Thank
By the
you.
way, if you haven't been here, you need to stop by. 1570 South Dairy, Ashford. And then we have Mitra and Mistofi. She is the author of This Was No Coincidence. So thank you very much for being with us. We also have Lakisha, Sarbah. Sarbah.
It's okay.
I just messed it up. I was doing so well earlier. So well. Online visibility strategist.
Yes.
So you teach people how to get found online, right?
I am. I'm a magician. Just call me your
Nice.
magician.
A virtual magician.
There we go. I like that. We also have Sophia Jorski. She is tell me, which year are you in the University of Houston? Junior year. That's what I thought. 18-year-old junior.
I'm 19 now.
Sweet. Don't take
I'm
that
still a teenager.
She is also the founder and owner of the Summertime Cakery. Delicious desserts. Get your cakes and cupcakes there. And then we have the ever so beautiful Brandie Seifert of Hollywood Hippie. And then there is me, Christina Meade, nerdy girl and woman advocate of Nerdy Girl Supplies. So today what we're talking about is the other B word. And if you're not sure what the other B word is bossy. And before I really get into where this kind of came from for this topic, for this talk show today, I want to just get a little bit of background of who's sitting here. So just by show of hands real quick, who's ever been called bossy before? Wow, I was going to say, I'm like, wow, really? You've never been called bossy before?
Not to my face, no.
Then there's that.
Or I tuned it out.
So what is the youngest age you remember being called bossy?
Well, I can actually remember. It wasn't actually the word bossy, but I knew that that's probably what they meant by it. It was more sassy, right? And so it was when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I had this amazing personality, but I still do, of course. And so I was always doing something, rather it was dancing or playing or running around the house or whatever. And I can't remember exactly who in my family, if it was a family friend or somebody else, that said, "She's so sassy." But it wasn't in a derogatory or mean type way. It was just, I just have some sass to me. And so I felt like maybe that was probably on the side of bossy, right? Sassy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a sexy version of bossy.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like, I don't know if I would mind being called sassy. I kind of like that.
I'm the oldest of 4 kids, so
my
I've
goodness.
always been called bossy. My sister, and then when I got married, my kids call me bossy, so I'm bossy all the time. And I've never taken offense by it at all, because I always felt like I was a boss.
Right.
I was always bossing people around because I needed things to get done. So, hey,
Right.
I'm going to boss you around. You're going to get it done. And they hated it. Like, my brothers and my sisters, my sister hated it. She was like, oh, there you go again, being bossy. I'm like, yeah, well, we need to get stuff done. You know, I'm the oldest. My mom would
Right.
leave me in charge of them. So, there
Right.
you go.
Right.
So, I never really
Exactly.
took it as a bad thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
It
kind
was
of
just
in
kinda
the same
funny.
boat as you.
Just
I
funny.
have 5 younger siblings, so, you know, I'm have no problem being in charge. And that kind of translates into other situations besides just younger siblings. So if somebody calls me bossy or refers to me as a boss, it's like, okay, I am the boss, so
Yeah.
I'm doing my job. Great.
Awesome.
Affirmation, check mark, done.
I think that we took ownership of it without really feeling like hurt by it.
Right. It's just, I'm
Sort
the
of
boss,
happy.
and that's an
Yeah.
adjective. So
That's good. Yeah, it was good.
I see being an only. I mean, I remember being called bossy, but pretty much everybody in my life.
I think only children
Kids.
tend to be very bossy.
See, and I remember it being like, I remember not liking being called, like the way that the tone of voice that was being used when I was being called bossy, it was definitely not a positive. I don't think that I really cared, but I know that it wasn't something that they were saying to me and that they meant it as a compliment, that it was something that was nice, that kind of thing. And I think as I got older, I think that as adults, we tend to use different words when face to face with somebody of
Right.
like describing that. And then, again, as you get older, you really get called the other B word.
Right.
Exactly. So it's just kind of that kind of thing. Brandie, have you ever been called bossy?
As a kid, I don't remember. I was kind of a little opposite, but as I got older, I took on management positions, and yes, and I actually didn't like it. I didn't think it was a compliment. I mean, I did think I was doing my job, but I was like, golly, I'm looking out for you guys. You realize how much I'm doing? So, yeah, for me, it wasn't really a compliment. I was kind of offended, but yeah, whatever. Still doing my job.
Yeah. Okay, so it didn't stop any of us.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the reason, so this is kind of where I came from with coming up with the topic for today's show was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, oh my gosh, Sheryl Sandberg's Ban Bossy. So actually a few years ago started the whole movement of banning the word bossy. And so I came across it with, with my stuff what I'm doing with Nerdy Girl Supplies. And so I thought, oh, well, I want to see some other research. What are some other statistics? Who else is doing research with women and girls being called bossy? And I came across another study who actually was doing some comparison with Sheryl Sandberg's Ban Bossy. They were looking exclusively at bossy in the workplace, and is it gender related, that kind of thing. So the first thing that they did with these people who were in the workplace is they asked them, like, okay, so when you're calling somebody bossy, what are some of the characteristics? Because Sheryl Sandberg is like, when girls are called bossy, they're really demonstrating leadership skills. So that was
Right.
their first thing that they were looking at. And what they found was that what people were saying is that, like, well, if somebody's when I call them bossy, they're being rude, they're micromanaging, they're being aggressive. So it's like, okay. So then as you keep going through, and then it's like, okay, so then who are you describing as bossy? And this is where I kind of things started kind of rolling for me, because things that they were saying, and I want to make sure that I kind of get it right here, but things that they were saying were that they were calling men were getting called bossy as well as women for the same characteristics. However, women were being called bossy twice as often as men were. And that, also across that, there was, so is it damaging to the career of a woman or of a man who's being called bossy? And they found that it's detrimental, but again, more so for women than it was for men. And so like the thing that kind of like through all of that, what hit me the most is that, like, so their conclusion was that, Sheryl Sandberg's, her conclusion, don't call anybody bossy. Their conclusion was like, yeah, tell people to not use the word bossy, but then also discourage men and women from doing those bossy characteristics. And I was like, so slow your roll there for just a second, because like, you're now taking the assumption that women are twice as often to be this bossy in the workplace than men are. And I'm like, so my question to you guys, and that's where this came from, is that are women really twice as likely to be those characteristics? Or is it twice as likely that we are perceived to be those characteristics, where we really are doing some of our leadership characteristics where we're really helping direct, like, these are the things that need to get done, and letting people know this is your role with getting things done, and you're not doing your role, and is that then, because it's coming from a woman instead of a man, now we're seen as micromanaging. So that's one of the, I'm like, that was my thought, but it's like, I want to hear from other people from, oh my gosh, by the way, please comment, ask questions. This is an interactive talk show, so if you've got thoughts about this as well, please tune in. So for you guys, so what do you think? Are we really more likely to be bossy in the workplace, or are we just being perceived that way?
I like to say that, you know, there's an important distinction in the characteristics of a female and a male in a workplace, in the sense that we're very meticulous. You know, I mean, not to say that men aren't meticulous, but we pay attention to details, and, you know. But whereas men are really great at looking at the overall picture, looking at the end goal, and so, yeah, we get perceived as bossy because we're looking at nitpicking every detail. We might come across as, you know, micromanaging, so we come across as bossy, whereas, no, we're actually doing our job.
I think women also tend to assert themselves a little bit more because they have to kind of prove that they can do the job. So I think, you know, it's probably something that just happens instinctively. You're not really thinking about being bossy, but you want to kind of show that you have the skills, you have what it takes to be the boss. You know, so we kind of do that to ourselves.
I agree, especially in corporate America. You just, I mean, when you show up, you know, people always speak about being their authentic selves, right? But as women, when we show up and we are our authentic selves and we bring that into a corporate workspace, then that's perceived as being bossy, right? Because we, like you said, right, we are meticulous. Like, we go into the details and we're saying, you know, what the things that need to be done, whereas men generally do look at the broader picture, right, just to get it done. We are actually showing you what you need to do to get it done. And so I think that's where the whole bossiness comes from, right? Because we really hold high regards, not that men
we're
don't.
micromanaging a little bit more.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, sometimes there are some approaches that are more stereotypically a male approach and some that are more stereotypically a female approach. So if we have more women joining the workforce, then obviously I think both sides have to kind of figure out a way to, you know, work together optimally. So, you know, like I am still in school, so I haven't had a whole lot of work experience, but just working in different groups and all, realizing that sometimes I need to adapt to my leadership approach when I'm leading a study group or some sort of in-class discussion, that, you know, different groups, different classes, you need different leadership approaches. So different people, you just have to adapt it and kind of see how are they perceiving this, because that's what this whole discussion is about, is how are people perceiving being called bossy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So also kind of taking the other side of that and going, okay, how are people perceiving me? How can I adjust that perception?
A little bit of self-awareness, basically.
Exactly.
A lot of self-awareness. I'm an author and I write about self-awareness. So I just totally took over that.
But it does come across
Oh,
that
it's
you have to
complete
be
self-awareness.
self-aware.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because then that's always going to be out there. People are going to
Absolutely.
think it and they're going to say it.
Right.
So just kind of like, okay, am I being a little too bossy?
Right.
I've never had the job title or the pay grade of a boss, but
Yeah.
I've definitely been bossy. And for me, being bossy has been a feeling. It's not so much a label,
Yeah.
but it's been a feeling, and I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
When I'm self-aware to it, you know,
Yeah.
I don't like the feeling. I think you know, it's not just the semantics of the word itself. You know, being an author, again, I'm a word nerd, and we support each other in our nerd mission. But, you know, it's not the semantics. Sometimes words can be very forgiving and sometimes completely indelible
Right.
to what we're trying to achieve. So, yeah.
I think it goes also with the yin and the yang, with the female and the male energy, right? Because we have a little of both. And so do men, right? Men have that feminine type energy, as you know, and we have their energy. And I think it's that whenever we're using that male energy, it's kind of like a more dominant energy, we're looked at as bossy, right? Taking the initiative, doing those type of things. When it's not really, we don't want to be perceived as being bossy. We're not trying to be bossy, but we're just taking on that male energy, right? And that's something that we have. It's not something that we can really get rid of. So
And we shouldn't get rid
no,
of it.
right?
That's a great trait to have.
Yeah. So I think whenever they are taking that into consideration, they should take that into consideration whenever
Right.
they're talking about we should be less than or whatever it was that you said that they said.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, like, and I was thinking this morning, prepping for this morning and everything. So I was trying to remember, like, in the workplace where I had been called bossy, or probably not. I'm like, in my adult life, I'm like, I don't think I've ever been called bossy to my face.
Me either.
Right.
I know behind my back.
Yes, me too.
Because like I was a department head, that kind of thing, and I'm like,
Right.
okay, so those instances where I feel like I probably was called that, I'm like, I feel almost like I was driven to it, because like I was department
Yeah.
head. Like that's the last time that I really kind of feel like I was probably called bossy. I was department head. I'm trying to get people to do things. So you've got these things, and so so here, and I'm trying to treat everybody like an adult. Just here you go. This is stuff you got to do, and then it's not getting done, so I'm coming back, and then it's not coming down, and I'm being nice about it the first like 5 times, and now it's like the time that I'm being called bossy, I'm like, for the love of God, would you please just get this done?
Yeah.
And that now, am I being rude? Absolutely. Am I micromanaging? Absolutely. Am I aggressive? You betcha I am. But it's like, because the first 5 times you didn't hear me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot with women too, is that
Yeah.
we're coming into, especially when we know we're coming into a male-dominated place, it's like, I've got to be heard. And then we're getting that whole perception of, then now we're bossy.
There's
Right.
another thing also that happens when women decide they're not going to work for another woman because, oh, she's going to be such a bossy
Right.
bee,
Yeah.
right? So you're like, oh, I'd rather work for a man because I know he's not going to be competitive. I know he's not going to feel like I'm going to be taking his place. Like, that's another thing that happens between women. Like,
Yeah.
even within the workspace, even within teachers, I mean,
Yeah.
even within anywhere.
Even
I mean,
within
it just
business
happens with
associates.
businesses
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yes.
But I don't think we should, put up this wall and cut off all of our opportunities.
No.
And say, I can't work with her because she's a female. Right now, I work with a great guy, but our dynamic works well with each other because he sees the big picture, and he's remiss to all the little details, and I'm really great at the little
it's a
details.
great balance.
Oh,
Right,
it's
yeah.
really a great balance. Now, is that the case for all situations
not,
with
yeah.
guys? No.
Right.
So we shouldn't cut off our opportunities just because we have these labels on people.
I've had great women bosses.
Very
I've
too.
loved them.
Right.
Well, I wanted to ask Brandie too, because like you bring up the point of like not wanting to work with other women, that kind of stuff, and that's pretty much exclusively as far as like with your makeup artist. That's all you work
Yeah.
with. So
And I
how
am
is that
bossy.
relation?
Yeah.
And so is your whole
relationship?
team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if they are. I wouldn't know because I'm just like, yeah. Ask the question again. What?
But just kind of wondering, like, so how do you find it? Do you find that that there maybe are certain makeup artists that you don't want to work with because they're bossy, or do you feel that they have that perception of you that they don't want to, like, because that's
Yeah.
pretty much who you're working with,
Yeah.
is like all women.
It depends on the job. If it's something I have to lead, and if they are going to be that way, I can't have that happening. It's
Yeah.
got to be fast. It's got to be quick, and it's just you've got to kind of do what I'm saying because maybe I have a certain look that needs to happen or whatever. It just depends on the job. I'm not opposed. I mean, I like working with all kinds
Yeah.
of women, but yeah, if I have someone that's just kind of butting heads with me, then I can't. Yeah. It's my show when I'm doing that, So, it's just kind of the way it is.
absolutely.
So, but I was gonna say earlier, you and we've worked a lot on different gigs and whatnot, and not until I've kind of heard these kind of discussions that it really opened my eyes, and that I kind of was judgmental, and I would often think women are bossy, even though I was a boss myself. But I started doing something in my head. I would visualize a female as a male instead, and think, would I still think that person's bossy?
Yeah.
And because I think even if women aren't don't have certain characteristics like we were talking about earlier, even if they are quiet, they can still be perceived. They can still be talked about just because they're female, and it's it's so sad. Like, you're just doing your freaking job, And it's so oftentimes you kind of opened my eyes in that area. So thank you.
Sure.
And so I'll kind of visualize like, well, no, they're. I just think there needs to be more awareness that we should empower each other.
Absolutely.
I think that's really what it comes down to. And I think sometimes we live in a little bubble in our head, and we just think, oh, she's I
Right.
was gonna say it.
I know, I'm like, unfortunately, I don't have the 3-second delay to
there's no what do they call that? The buzz out or the
Right.
the bleep. We should like have little like filters like bloop, pop it up over our
over a
yeah.
mouse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's really important that regardless of any past experience that you've had, to just come in and not come in with a chip on your shoulder.
Right.
And, kind of go, okay, let's assess this situation and see what's going on here and how I'm going to lead here or how I'm going to be a team player. Because you don't have to lead all the time. Sometimes you do need to be a team player.
Absolutely.
And, not going, I'm not going to work for her because she's going to boss me around. Not doing that. Just kind of taking each situation separately. That if you, go in, treat people the way you want to be treated, and lead people the way you would like to be led, or follow a leader the way you would like to be followed as a leader,
Right.
that I think a lot of these problems would probably go away.
See, one, but I know if you just be nice. That's my whole thing. Just be nice to one another.
You said empowerment. How do we empower each other? Let's think in a practical sense.
Right.
If we were to work with each other, and you or I, whichever, was bossy, and we know this from the team, like not necessarily my opinion of you being bossy, but
Right.
just hearing people and getting the impression that they're
Right.
not getting the job done because they're so intimidated.
Right.
So how would I approach you to empower you to get your work done and get, have a better perspective on your job title?
Right.
How would I empower you? Of course, not in a public
Right.
setting.
Oh, yeah,
but
right.
privately, how would I empower you?
Privately, I think it's giving the person the heads up, like, hey, I want you to just kind of know that, not saying right or wrong, just saying that this is a little bit of a perception that's going on here. How can you and I maybe work together to help shift some perceptions so that way we're now becoming that cohesive team that we need in order to get this job done? Because, you're the head of this, and so we need to do this so that way not only do we look good, but you look good as well. So how can we do this? You need us, we need you, kind of thing. So just bringing that awareness, I think, in a manner of which it's like, I'm just trying to help. Like, how can I help?
Right.
That kind of thing. Because I would think, I know that before, like I've had a female boss, a principal, tell me, you're bossy, and you need to cut it out. And I gotta say that while she was right, I probably wasn't the most receptive to that particular delivery.
Because
you know what I mean?
That's
exactly.
being
Like,
bossy in itself,
Right.
to rehash that word.
Exactly. So it's just kind of like, so it's like, okay. So then just, again, like I said, going back and thinking about it, it's like, okay, yeah. But, there's a way that it could have been handled where I would have been more receptive to listening and like, okay, because again, like I said, I completely
You tune
turned off,
out.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
you
get
lost it too,
defensive.
kind of.
Always connecting to the mission that you have together.
Right.
Always
Exactly.
connecting to that mission, always connecting to that goal. Where are we trying to go? What are we trying to do? You want to do the best job? I want to do the best job. How can we work together? How can we make that happen? We both have the same goals. We both want to reach that. Let's see how we can do it together. I think as a leader and I think as a boss, you have to really be self-aware. You have to always be considering, okay, how am I coming across? Am I giving direction in a compassionate way? Am I being too strong? But I think that's okay because that's important. Like that's a boss trait that I would look for. That's what I want to become.
Also finding something positive when you have to give a negative. Like I had a piano teacher for 10 years, all the way up until I graduated high school. And I play classical and Christian piano, so I have some songs that are, over 15 pages long. So the first time I play it for him, there's a lot wrong, but he would prioritize, okay, what are the top 3 things wrong, and then what are a couple things that you're doing well. And you don't have to fix everything all at once. That's something that I have a problem with, is I want everything right now. And you don't have to have it all at once.
Yes.
So you're saying if he was to be bossy with you, he would demand all of it at once.
Exactly.
Got
So he
it.
would just
Yeah.
prioritize, okay, do these 3 things. And then once we've got that, we'll start working on stuff that isn't as important as the first 3 things. Because if you give someone a list of every single thing they're doing wrong and how they need to fix it, if we look at the dictionary definition of bossy, that would fit it.
Yeah. As a teacher, we would meet with the parents. We'd always give them the good points before we went into them.
Right.
Yeah.
So now I want to flip it a little bit because, So we've been talking about women in the workplace and being called bossy and that kind of thing. So as a teacher, one of the things that I know when you look at the Ban Bossy website, which is a really cool website, it's got some really cool activities and that kind of thing. But one of the reasons why it struck a chord with me is because I saw those characteristics in my female students because I taught junior high school. So them not wanting to take the lead, not wanting to raise their hand, all of that kind of stuff, which then it's like, so okay, hey, so some of it is because they're shy or whatever, but how much of it is because of the fact that they've been chastised, called whatever, because they were doing something that they felt that they were taking the lead, and then they were called bossy, or they've had a negative experience, and so now they're wanting to step back. They don't like taking the lead. If they're given the lead for like a project or whatever, or if if they're given the option, they don't. Most girls don't take it, and they're very quiet about that. So then, what can we do as women, as moms, as aunts, whatever, as sisters? What can we do to kind of, what advice, or how do we help with these girls who are that we see start shrinking back from leadership, and that being that, or they come home and they cry and they say, they call, the kids were mean to me today, they call me bossy. How do we take that and turn that into a way of empowering our girls, so when they meet that adversity, that it's okay, they know how to cope with it?
I oftentimes say the sole purpose of a child is to see how much power they have up until 18. So you've passed that mark. But, if you think of, their actions in like group settings and with their little friends, they're just constantly trying to see how much power they have over their parents. So I will be quick to call a little kid out and say they're bossy, regardless if they're a boy or a girl. But the distinction is adulthood.
Yeah.
We're not by 19, in an ideal world, we like to think that we know how powerless we can be, and we know how much influence we can have in the world. But to, just overbearingly try to control and bulldoze a situation, that's not leadership, you know. So I think with kids, I think there's a lot of sportsmanship in leadership. Leaders actually listen to what the team is saying versus bossy, being bossy doesn't, it's all self-preserving. One of the recent things I've been thinking about is how my life and how my role in all the leadership roles that I carry, how would that be different if I had played more sports growing up? Because I've noticed that with my niece right now. She's in a basketball team, and she has great leadership skills. And when she was little, she was bossy. But now I could see that it's converting into leadership, because at the end of the game, they all want to win. It's not about who takes the ball and owns, all the points. It's about passing the ball, working as a team, and not bossing anybody around. So I would say get them out there in a sports team.
That's a great idea.
Good practical idea.
It is, definitely.
I'm putting on my glasses because thank you, Cindy Childress. She has participated in our interaction here. She says, I have a direct report who's a collegiate football player and doesn't like to listen to me. He is the weakest player on my sales team. How would you approach him in a way that gets my mission accomplished?
Okay, that totally just debunks my theory on Never mind, scratch that. Don't put your kids in sports.
Okay, so who wants to take that? So, what would be, he's a weak player on the sales team. So what's her, and he doesn't like to listen to her. Hoy, yeah, I feel your pain there. So the way to approach, part of my thing would be kind of like, one thing that I've learned through the different leadership positions that I have is that if you always praise publicly and criticize privately. So having the conversation with him maybe privately about some things, and even asking, what are some things, do you feel like you are struggling with this? What does he see as his role, that kind of thing, and his performance, and asking him that way, again, like I said, privately, but then also, it needs to be like, what is your sales team trying to accomplish? I'm like, we've got to get here, and how do I help you help us get there because I want you to be successful. I want us all to be successful because I'm like, if it's a sales team, you probably all have a quota that you're trying to reach, and you've got Johnny here who's not pulling his weight. So trying to see what help he needs to get him there. Is there anybody else?
I think one thing that would work would be something we used to do as a teacher as well, is have them set their own goals so they have ownership of their goals. And when they have ownership of their goals, they're more inclined to do it, as opposed to me telling him, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to. Okay, so what do you think? Write down the goals that you feel like are going to be important for our sales team, and have them go through them, and then you add some input to that, and then give some feedback. But have them because I think one thing that happens with a lot of people is they don't feel like they have ownership of anything. They're not recognized. And I think maybe just recognizing the good thing, like a positive thing, and then just going from there. So, but you do really well at this. But let's set some goals.
Let's work on these areas.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah,
exactly.
One of my business mentors said, for each negative comment you give, you should have 3 positives.
Positives,
Oh, is that what you were going to say?
No, that's what Sophia had said earlier.
Oh, okay, piggyback off that. So, anyway, so it makes me think, because sometimes I'm a little really direct in some negative feedback, and so because of the kind of work that I do, where work time is of the essence to working on set or whatever. So afterwards, it's kind of the opposite. I probably do negative in public and praise in private. So I have to work on that, but it's kind of hard because we're doing a live show.
Doing
and
exactly.
It's a different situation.
It's
You have
different.
to approach each situation.
It's different. But I try to make sure that I can give as much positivity.
But your
I can.
purpose is still the same, though. You're trying to create good rapport. You're trying to create a good relationship. I mean, if we had a good relation, like we do have a good relationship, but if we had like this, just wonderful relationship working with each other, I don't think I would take any offense to anything you criticize me about, because I know it's going to be constructive. I know you're going to want the best for me. So I think building that rapport is really, really important, such as in her case, I don't know, possibly change the language so that he can understand it better. There's an offense team, there's a defense team, let's talk about the team that he likes, because he's being very defensive. He's playing defense. He's not passing the ball. He's not playing offense. So, sometimes we have to, I don't know anything about. I don't know anything about football, but if my boss was, I'll go study it. I'll go study a little bit about football to try to just speak his language a little bit.
Because I am curious as to what is making him the weakest player. Is it because his skill level isn't to where it needs to be, or is it like you were saying before, he doesn't really feel connected to it, he doesn't really care, he doesn't really want to do this. So finding out too, like, what is it that's making him that weakest player, and then working towards that. Because quite honestly, maybe one of the reasons why he doesn't want to listen is because he knows he's the weakest player on the sales team. And he's embarrassed by it.
He's defending himself.
No offense to like dudes or whatever. I mean, chicks were the same way. Just that the ego is very like, you don't like being pointed out and you're doing something wrong. Yikes.
Especially if he's the only one, like if he's always being called in. I would recommend, having a meeting with him and not making it so much about what he's doing wrong or his sales numbers, but letting him know that you are there to support him. And then maybe come up with some type of action plan to help him, some type of steps to get him there so that he can achieve his goals. And so that he does feel like you're working with him and not against him. And then maybe even have him partner with a stronger somebody on your sales team that's stronger, have him partner with them for the day. Let them show him what it is that they're doing, because maybe he does know all the right things to do, right? But maybe he is feeling a little bit behind, and when we feel a little bit behind, we feel like, well, what's the use in catching up, because I'm just not going to meet my numbers anyway. He feels defeated. So maybe it has a lot to do with his morale, the momentum, motivation even. So I would say work with him one-on-one if you can, make an action plan for him, and then maybe even have him work with a team member, one of your other sales team members that are doing really well, and so that they can also help him. So it's all about support as well. Absolutely. What type of support does he have?
And one of the things I always look at, if someone needs a little help with their coaching, is, do you have the tools needed to succeed?
Yes.
Let's look at that, and let's help you with that as well. And let's get you set up for success, because that's really important. Instead of always drilling goals and whatnot, let's make sure you're set up for success first.
Absolutely. Well, ladies, like I said, we're going to try to keep this at 30 minutes for this, and so we're right at our 30 minutes. thank you so much for those of you who tuned in. If you're watching us on the replay, please feel free to put your comments, put your questions in. We've all been tagged in it, so we'll be watching to see and answer those questions for y'all. I hope you enjoyed it, and you guys have a great day. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.